Well, welcome everyone. Here we are recapping the March 5th City Council meeting, and we have one of our City Council members right here. This is Tom van Overbeek of the Chico City Council.
Happy to be here, Brent.
So glad that you're here. And a lot of things are changing in Chico. One of the things that this city council is doing is repairing infrastructure. It's kind of one of those non-sexy things that we don't really pay too much attention to. A lot of it's maybe underground, flood control things. I mean, we all kind of know the potholes that are a little more obvious.
Nobody cares about the plumbing till it stops working.
Yes, yes. And one of the big items that was on the city council agenda for last night was the complete streets and what's going on with our sewer system, especially the part that's running through downtown Chico. Tom, you want to fill us in a little bit on what's going on there?
Yeah, so this all started when I had an idea. A friend of mine is a parking expert, and believe it or not, there are people like that. So he said to me one day, if we had diagonal parking on Main and Broadway, we could increase the number of parking spaces by 40%. I said, that's a great idea. So as soon as I got elected to the city council, one of the first things that I proposed is that we consider diagonal parking on Main and Broadway. So I went to go talk to the city manager, and he said, well, we found out a few weeks ago that our sewer system was put in 1908, and it was supposed to last 75 years. So you can do that math. That's 1983.
Yeah. We're a little off there.
Yeah. So for decades, previous city councils just kicked the can down the road on infrastructure things, and we all know about potholes.
Yeah.
So he said, since we have to tear the streets up anyway to fix the sewer and the Cal Water PG&E infrastructure at the same time, that gives us an opportunity to really reimagine what the downtown could be like, what the streetscape could be like. And other cities have done these kinds of things. The things that have put pressure on downtowns are online shopping malls that are on the outskirts of town.
Things that kind of maybe hindered it a little bit from being
Well, they've taken downtowns used to be the economic center.
Correct.
And in a lot of cities they've just dried up because the people who run the city haven't paid attention to it. Chico has the great benefit of having a university with 14,000 students and 2,000. We have a new president at the university, and that enrollment's growing again. 2,000 faculty and staff who spend money in downtown. It's right next to downtown, so that's been a lifeline for downtown. So what other cities have done, and most of them have done this, 10 or 15 years ago, was to redesign the streetscape to make it more pedestrian-friendly and more bike-friendly. So think about this: you're a real estate guy.
Yep.
If you were going to design a shopping mall, or take Merriam Park, which is a great project.
Yeah.
Would you design it with 2 3-lane thoroughfares through the middle of it? No.
Right.
No, you wouldn't do that.
I'm trying to think of Merriam Park. Yeah, there's no 3-lane
no.
streets.
The streets run on the edges, but they don't go through it.
Right.
Now, the downtown, the first buildings were built in the early 1860s, and the things evolved since then. So we do have these 2 streets that go through there, but there are 2 streets. There's a park that comes in from the south. That's 2 lanes in each direction. Esplanade, which it connects to the north, is 2 lanes in each direction.
Yeah.
So why do we have 3 lanes in the middle of town? In the middle of town is when you want people to slow down.
Yeah.
And have so that's called traffic calming. So one of the objectives is traffic calming. So it makes it a more comfortable place for pedestrians to be. One of the ways you do that is you have narrower lanes, and in our case, we don't need 3 lanes, we only need 2 lanes, because the traffic right now, it 8 to 12,000 cars a day go through that with 2 lanes in each direction. Highway 99, there's 55,000 cars a day. Right now, there's no stoplights on 99, but still, we have plenty of capacity with 2 lanes.
That's a good point. I haven't thought about that.
But the big if is, what about freight loading and unloading? Because what happens is when the Sierra Nevada truck pulls up in front of the tap house
at 8 a.m.
They're double parked.
Yes.
Well, the problem isn't 8 a.m. The problem is later in the day. Because I was downtown this morning at 8, and there were whole block faces with nobody parked. I mean, there was nobody there.
Yeah, I see a lot of. I guess it's all day. Yeah.
But it fills up at about 11:30. So we have to figure out a way to manage the freight loading and unloading, so that we actually have 2 lanes of traffic all the time and people don't double park. So one of the ways, the way other cities have done it, they do 2 things. One is they designate some of the parking in the morning, the parallel parking, as a loading unloading zone, and then it becomes parking later.
Okay.
And the second thing they do is they enforce the no double parking rule, and you get fined, $500 if you do it. So, and there are signs that say, if you do this, really bad things are going to happen to you, and that's how you fix it. But so we have to manage that if we're going to take it down to 2 lanes.
Wow.
But that's all doable. So other cities have done it. We're not somebody. When I talk about this project, people say that is so creative. And I say no, it's not. It's just the stuff that other cities have done successfully for decades.
Wow. So, okay. So when you talk about changing downtown, a lot of people, including myself, love downtown.
I love it.
Kind of like it the way it is, a little bit. So when you talk about, okay, we're going to change it, we're going to improve it, I think most people are just kind of nervous about that. I mean, is there an example that you could point to? Is there a city that's done it really well? You're like, hey,
Livermore
Livermore.
or Folsom. It's a smaller town, but
Okay.
Livermore was, it's beautiful now. They've done the same kind of stuff that we're talking about. Very pedestrian oriented, wider sidewalks.
Okay.
It's a beautiful little downtown.
Okay, so that's a good example that we could kind of point to and say, hey, it's
Yeah.
not going to be terrible.
But,
This is going to
the
be.
idea is not to make this like some other town. It's to make it more Chico-like. There's a lot we can do to improve the streetscape. Right now, we have trees that have heaved up the sidewalks in a lot of places.
Yeah.
We have grates around the trees that are above the level of the sidewalk, so they're a trip hazard. A lot of the trees are not species that are appropriate to this climate, and when they were planted, they didn't have root barriers. So we are going to save the trees that are worth saving, but part of the project is to widen the sidewalks, and which is why we need to go down to 2 lanes on Main and Broadway, so we can have wider sidewalks. But also to move the trees out to the edge of the sidewalks. If you didn't do that, you just have trees in the middle of the sidewalk, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you got to move the trees out.
Yeah, so we're going to plant new trees, and as large as we can economically get. They're talking about 36-inch box trees, which are good-sized trees.
That's good.
So you get a head start. So it doesn't take a
5
generation
years,
or 20 years to
grow up fully.
Yeah, but because we're going to plant appropriate species for the climate, and because they're going to be farther away from the building, they're going to get more sunlight, they're going to have irrigation. What we're going to end up with something that is really gorgeous.
Okay.
A really grand avenue, tree-lined avenue.
Well, the way you put it makes me less nervous. Makes me a little more excited about it.
You don't know anybody that is more enthusiastic about Chico history than me. So I've been running around making building owners crazy, trying to get them to put monument signs on historically interesting buildings to talk about the history. And did you know that there's a DCBA historical building walking tour? So you click on the corner of one of those monument signs downtown on the buildings on your phone, and it takes you to a site online that does a guided walk of historical buildings.
Wow.
So the history is what gives it a sense of place.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can't recreate that in a brand new development.
Right. So it sounds like we want to redesign downtown, the walkways, the driving, all of it, and at the same time give homage to and preserve the historical elements of
Absolutely.
it. Do them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And walk that line, essentially.
Well, no, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're complementary. So the whole idea is you make downtown an interesting place to be. So you don't go there because you're going to pick up a pita pit from, the pita pit place, which is one of my favorite places.
Yeah, love pita pit.
Yeah. So you're not going to just walk down there, get your pita pit and get your pita sandwich and leave. It's a place where, you're going to shop, you're going to have brunch, you're going to walk around, see what's new. But you know what? When you're driving by a shop window at 40 miles an hour, you don't see what's in that person's window. But when you walk by, that's a different deal. Outdoor cafe. So we got a lot more outdoor dining, which people in Chico love.
Yes, love outdoor dining. Okay, so you're talking about parking. So you're going to add, this plan is going to add, did you say 40% more parking?
No. So the city did a proposal that let's focus on Main and Broadway because that's really the big
Yeah.
question. Okay.
Totally.
So the city first did a proposal that said we're going to put a protected bike lane, class 4 bike lane. So that's two-way bike lane with a 5 foot wide concrete strip with a planter in the greenery in the middle of it. And that was going to take out parking on one side of Main Street. And our local business people rightly said, we don't think that's a great idea. We need more parking downtown, not less. And I agree. We cannot lose a single parking space downtown. So we said to the city staff last night at council, go back and figure out another way to achieve the goals we want, to make this a great place to come, improve the pedestrian environment, excuse me, but not lose any parking. And the way you do that is you do diagonal parking on one side of Main and Broadway, move the bike lane over to Wall or Flume, and if you do that, because you end up losing, excuse me, you end up losing parking spaces wherever the bike lane goes, which we want to do because A, we get grant money, but B, it connects with the bike trail on Esplanade and then the one on the east side of Park.
Okay.
So you can go north, south, east, west
Downtown.
with a protected bike lane. But so anyway, if you do diagonal parking, the city's going to consider this on Salem, Main, and Broadway. You put the bike path on Flume or Wall, and you lose those spaces. You end up gaining 50 or 60 spaces net, right?
Okay.
So we get all that stuff we want, and we have more parking.
Okay.
Now, that's my idea, and some people listen to me, not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where it goes. But that, to me, is the way we give the bike people what they want, and we give the downtown merchants and the shoppers that want a place to park what they want.
Okay. All right. So talk about cost, time frames. I mean, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, all that stuff.
I'm just hoping it gets done in my lifetime. These
Okay.
things take forever because there's grant money. So we're trying to get the state and the feds to pay for as much of this as possible.
Right.
So there's some sort of carbon reduction act that will pay for design. There's something called an active transportation plan. So if you create bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, the state will pay for some of it. So our goal is to get the right answer for Chico, but to pay for as little of it as possible out of
Okay.
general fund money. So that means you have to write the grants, you have to apply for them.
Takes time.
So before we do any construction, it's probably 2029 or 2030.
Wow.
And then because we don't want to tear the whole downtown up at once, the idea is do a block face at a time so that businesses can still operate. We're probably looking at a 2 or 3 year construction cycle, something like that.
Wow.
I'm going to be really old. You're going to be middle-aged by the time
I'm
that
already
happens.
middle-aged, so it's all good. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so that's covers the time.
But as far as money, we have to get a final plan. But we're talking 40 to 60 million bucks. It's the biggest public works project we've done in Chico ever. But it's listen, this is something that people are going to be living with 75 or 100 years from now, just
Yeah.
like we're living with what
John
the
Bidwell.
people
Yeah.
175, 100 years ago decided what to do, or even when Bidwell laid the city out,
Right.
the streets are still there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so this is, in my lifetime as a city official and the lifetime of the people at the city, this is the most consequential thing we will do in our lives, and we're treating it that way. It's a big deal, and we all live here too, and we love the downtown. We want to make it better.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, so where can people go? They're watching this. Where can they go to find out more information? Are there any renderings or any place that they can go to?
What we don't want to do is to put out a bunch of things that are not fully baked, and then you get a bunch of people upset over something that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so it's top
So,
secret a
so
little
we,
bit right now.
we need a little more time to come back with exactly what it's going to look like on Main and Broadway.
Mhm.
And then also the cross street, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th will be impacted to some degree
Okay.
or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And anything else you want to say about it?
Well, there's a lot of people in Chico. It's just human nature that don't want things to change,
Yep.
and things are changing whether you want them to or not.
That's
Things are changing, and so it's what human beings do really well. We're the only species on the face of the earth that lives in the equator and lives in Arctic conditions because we know how to adapt. So we've got to adapt to conditions.
yeah.
And downtowns have changed. They're not the center of retail anymore, but retail's important.
Hmm.
They become more centers for entertainment, restaurants, bars, live music. I think when you have an exciting place that you want to be, we're going to start seeing more offices come back. If we make downtown a more interesting place, it's going to help the university with enrollment.
Absolutely.
I got to believe one of the reasons the enrollment crashed from 17 to 13,000 is people came to town with their children and saw vagrants camped in the plaza and
Yep.
said, "I'm not sending my kid to school here."
Yep.
Every one of those kids spends $17,000 a year. So we lose 4,000 kids. That's $68 million. It's not being spent in the local restaurants and
Yeah.
bars and landlords and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's going to help Chico State University. It's going to help just the general, like, working class people to have a cool place to go, something to
Yeah.
be proud of. It's going to help the businesses, the small businesses, restaurants, bars, all that downtown. And yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't know by listening to local businesses, but our goal is to make it better for them, not worse. They
yes.
complain every time we want to change something, but the kiosks regrets another conversation. But
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for the time here and giving us a little recap of
you
what's
bet.
going on the complete
My pleasure.
streets.
Very exciting project.
All right. Look
Okay.
forward to seeing more about it.
Thanks, Brent.